All right. Welcome everybody from the official coverage from Direwolf. Welcome to the after show. I am your host Telemachus, and joining me tonight, we've got some very special guests. We've got first your 2020 World Champion, LightsOutAce. How's it going, Lights Out?
Yo, doing okay.
Alrighty, and we also have the T&E Winter Champion, Doc28. How's it going, Doc?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we are very happy to have both of you. We got a whole hour show lined up. We got a lot to cover, so we're going to jump in. We are getting Watchwolf set up. Congratulations to Watchwolf. We are getting them signed up here to get on so we can start doing a winner's interview. But before that, we will dive right into just initial thoughts. Initial thoughts of the tournament, initial thoughts of the format. We'll go in deep in a little bit, but while I get Watchwolf up here, Ace, why don't you start us off? What were your initial thoughts on the tournament today?
It was really a sort of a rock, paper, scissors between these sling decks that crushed all of the mid-range decks, the combo deck that won the tournament that kind of crushed the sling and all the mid-range decks, and then decks that could beat combo but were a bit weak to sling, such as some of the soldiers decks and Gerald decks. And those are kind of the pillars of the format.
All right, Doc, what about you? Any initial thoughts?
I agree with a lot of that. Though I think the biggest takeaway for me, and this is kind of how we thought about it in testing too, is like the FPS cards are just like really good, and there's a bunch of different ways to play them. I mean, you can do them with Tesseract, you can do Overloader combo, you can do just like Kroll stuff. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. I mean, Crafty Occultist is great, Grenahan is amazing. The entire core of it is just really strong, and there's a lot of different ways to do powerful things with those cards.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm still getting Watchwolf up here, so let's just dive right into a quick deck tech. Yeah, I'll turn Doc up in a second here. Quick deck tech. Let's just take a look at the winning deck. Doc, why don't you start us off? I'll boost you a little bit on your audio, but why don't you start us off? For anybody that didn't get to see it or wants to know how to play this deck, why don't you walk us through this winning deck, this amplifier deck here real quick?
So this deck kind of has like two main parts to it. The first is you have Crafty Occultist, Grenahan, Savior, the Meek. You're kind of spamming units on board, you're filtering through your cards, and you're trying to reach the kind of like the win state, the end goal, and that is Overloader combo. So there's the combo aspect with Overloader, Hardiness, Diabolic Machinations. Basically, you just make a bunch of power. It's kind of like you're ritualing over and over again, like in Magic with like Storm. You make a bunch of power, and then you shoot a Pyrotech Explosion at your opponent's face for a bunch, or the other one, Dianglo Arson.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's kind of got those two elements. You can win with the beatdown plan sometimes, but usually you're trying to win with Overloader combo. And it's kind of hard to disrupt that deck once it starts going off, because you make a bunch of power, and then like your opponent tries to interact with it, but because you have all that power, you can use the cards in your hand to protect your combo and continue to go off and win the game.
Yep. Absolutely, and we saw that a couple times. Definitely one of the things we were talking about just before this started offline, and I did get Watchwolf up, so he'll be joining us here in just a sec. We talked about whether this deck is annoying or not, and we'll get into that a little bit later when we get to the bans and nerfs discussion. But one thing we talked about was how difficult it is to actually disrupt. Could you go into a little bit more detail on that, Doc, on just like what doesn't work, what does work, on how to disrupt this combo?
Well, so one of the ways you would like try to disrupt the combo in theory is you would try to kill the Overloader before they can Diabolic Machinations. Usually what will happen in a lot of cases is the opponent will play some number of Hardiness first. The issue with that is you're still making a bunch of power, and usually they'll be like Condemn will be able to protect the combo. Something like Dazzle can still protect the combo. There's a bunch of different ways to protect it at that point in the game still. So that's one of the ways. The other ways, I suppose you could try to counter the like Pyrotech Explosion, but usually, again, there'll usually be like some piece of protection left in hand, or the Overloader player will be able to set themselves up in a way to make sure the opponent's tapped out or can't interact enough.
Yeah, and maybe we should let Watchwolf get into it, but a lot of it is just that the Overloader player really gets to dictate the tempo, because once they are at 5 power, they could Hardiness and win at any time. So like some of your opponent's power is constrained if they want to interact at fast speed, and the amplifier combo person can decide whether they want a Machinations for like a burn spell to finish it, or like whether they want some negates to protect that. They really get to kind of choose how you can interact with them and how they want to counter interaction.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we do have Watch Wolf on here, so let's flip over. I'm going to cover up LightsOutAce and Doc28 real quick. We're gonna get to see Watch Wolf here. So, congratulations, Open Champion. How's it feel?
Feels great. Very unexpected throughout any point in the weekend until I'm literally like on combo turn in the finals. So, you know, even just like top 64ing, I get super excited. I never take them for granted. And, you know, I just still kind of in disbelief. I mean, both the people with me here, Doc and LightsOutAce, like probably have similar feelings. Like you definitely have like some have joy, but it's like you're still processing it and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so
Absolutely.
I'm ready to talk, answer questions, anything.
Well, we're going to have a ton of questions. So everyone in chat, feel free to drop questions. Doc, Ace, and I are going to be asking Watchroll some questions, but you're welcome to drop your questions in there as well, and I will ask those as well. All right, Ace, well, why don't we start out with you? You get first crack at Watchroll Face. What's your burning question?
Well, the interesting thing about your build is you went with Overlayer main and only Condemn for market instead of the, I guess, I don't know about traditional, like the original build, which had 8 market with Extend Merchant and Overloader market. Why did you decide to go with main deck Overloaders?
Yeah, so perhaps I'm not the best person to ask about this. So I'm so bad. Kolokoma and Gato Sujo were the ones that really came up with this list. So I'm a part of the misplay, and they saw Sunny's list that was posted with the Savior of the Meek and kind of had a similar shell, but I believe it had the market hardiness instead of maining the hardiness, and that was like the main distinction that I'm so bad ended up coming up with, and just running the 4 hardiness main. And I just found myself in a lot of spots, especially on day 1, where everyone's assuming that you need to kind of go through hoops to get your overloader. And just the fact that you can kill from very small amounts of power by having access to hardiness main. So part of what turned me onto it was just the fact that a lot of people were playing a lot of different lists, and that can be very difficult in a like closed deck list day 1.
Adequate Finch asks in chat, what match had you sweating the most? Was there a specific match or a specific maybe opponent deck list that had you sweating?
Jeez, I should have premeditated the answer to this question. So I would say, so I actually had a pretty rocky start in day 1 where I was like 13-8 and didn't think I was going to go particularly well. And then I either top decked into or just like happened to draw into an opponent that would tap out, and I just killed on 4 times. And I'm just like, all right, like we're in this now. So I was definitely sweating until those happened. But for single match, probably either game 2 of the finals, where if I miss my 3rd power, it's just not going very well. And there were a lot of like dicey power situations. That was probably the main part I didn't like about the deck. I want to play a few more seats than vows, but I just, you know, Kolokoma said he was playing this, and Kolokoma we trust. But there was also in the semis against PD, I felt pretty heads up by condemning and putting the overloader in my market and then getting seek power. That way all my condemns can now get overloader. They have 8 discard spells and Svetya that can screw up things, and Speaking Circle for whatever. And it took literally until the last turn for me to be able to get the overloader back out of the market. And I was just thinking to myself, like, oh my God, I'm on stream. If I look like this, a complete, like, you know, whatever word you want to use for like putting overloader in my market on turn 2 and just not having access to it, I'm going to feel terrible. And then just happened to, I think I got like the down dark scrounger to get back condemned to then be able to get it. And it's like, that was a lot to take in.
All right, Doc, over to you.
I would be super interested to know how you guys arrived at the decision to play Overloader relative. Like, what else did you test? Like, how did you decide that was the right deck to bring for this tournament?
Yeah, so not to give away all the misplaced trade secrets, Doc of which definitely knows some, but we all kind of like sprout out into our different spheres. So we have D-Dub is going to discover the best aggro deck, and then we have Kolokoma that likes playing good cards. I'm So Bad does everything, and you know, it just keeps on going. Like Gato Sujo really likes Sack. I kind of just like doing something I find really cute. Like my previous good finishes were kind of with like this Kilo deck and Expedition that played like Jadehorn and all these weird loops. So what fascinated me the most was Whispering Winds with no one to hold them. Tell me if you've heard this before. For cool. But I was very obsessed with the life speaker. That way you can like cruel infinitely, because by the time you draw the cruel, it like sees the inspire. So you like lose the life and gain the life, which can like trigger your venomous Nightshade, and if you want to play the Mandrake Shell. And the missing piece for me was definitely the Sile, and I'm very jealous of you and all your teammates. But I pretty much had everything except for the Sile. Like I knew about the Molder market also, and I was just like, I'm missing one really good card, and I kept on playing Darkwater Vines and Life Speaker instead of Sile, which definitely like changed a lot of stuff because Sile like gives you the ability to attack in the air. So I was just running into these problems where I couldn't attack in the air efficiently enough. And yeah, so what ended up happening was it's day of the tournament. I typically like just watching friends play and scouting out the meta. I do a lot of homework on Friday from like pretty much once I get out of work to roughly midnight. All I do is watch and consume matches, and I watch replays, I watch VODs, I watch everything to know as much of the meta as possible. Then around like noon Eastern, I sign up for the event with whatever I think is the best. And I realized that if I want to win this tournament, I would have to go through these. Like I played against Lion to Zion on ladder, and I saw like I knew some menace thing was going on. We had some people that played on day one, so we got a little bit of scouting there. So I was just like, you know what? Whatever they're doing is definitely worse than whatever I'm going to come up with. I need to attack from a different axis. At this point, we had, D-Dub played what he thought was the best aggro deck, and some people played Amplifier, Magikarp Day 2 with Combray, so, everyone kind of like in their own area, but Kolokoma chose to play Amplifier just thinking it's still broken, and the meta we saw on Friday would be good for this. So in our tracker, you say what deck you play, and then, got to Sujo and Kolokoma put like Amplifier. I just put In Kolo We Trust, and then, after that, we have just like I'm So Bad and Pyrese also joining with the same exact list, and it was just like I didn't know the contents of this team conglomerate menace deck, but unless if very specific cards were played, it couldn't have too good of an overloader matchup. I did lose like 4 or 5 times to it on day one though, and beat it once. My first round playing the event was actually round 1 at 12:30 or whatever. Whenever I signed up, like I've never played overloader before, but I've played card games before, so it definitely helped.
Chat, I wouldn't necessarily take that as advice to emulate, but pretty good there. So we're gonna go over this a little bit and how much the meta has shifted this week, in particular, how quickly it's changed. But around what was it, Monday or Tuesday maybe, you were seeing a lot of Mono Fire coming out and soldiers coming out and people sort of trying to tech against Overloader. Did that scare you off at all, or are you saying you didn't even decide to play Overloader until after that wave had already passed?
I was still concerned about it, especially what our team calls the Sunny effect. Sunny decided to play Mono Fire, and I felt like if he day 2'd, many people would play Mono Fire. But I kind of... So I actually ended up in a really weird situation where... This doesn't directly answer your question, but still a funny story. Where I had one more match to play, and I actually care a lot about what my pairings are going to be. So I don't finish all my matches if I already locked up day 2. And I try to, use scouting and all the information from what I did on Friday to try to figure out what matchup I'm going to play and what bracket am I going to be. Like I knew that Magikarp and Kolo were probably going to day 2, so get me as far away from them as possible. So I would have had to play against TDK on the Tesseract deck. And, it's kind of his baby. He's probably very comfortable in the matchup. Whether or not it was good or bad, I didn't know because I just played this blind. So I was just like, okay, there's like 4 or 5 Mono Fire in day 2 or something like that. And I think based on the people I played, maybe my breakers would end up like wherever. So I play out my last round, lose, And then I'm just playing against Mono Fire, and I'm like, God, I can't believe I did the exact thing I didn't want to do. And the worst part was I was still on the same side of the bracket as Kolokoma. Like nothing changed other than my matchup. And I guess I changed the fates too. So, and I didn't play against Mono Fire at all on day one. And I played against Soldiers like 4 or 5 times, probably went like 3-2 or 2-3. But I ended up, you might make fun of me for this, but the way I test for open decklist tournaments is something I call just like play testing in my head, where I just line up both deck lists and specifically think about all the permutations of what can happen from turn 1 through 5, because that kind of dictates the pace of like the later like stuff. So there are only like 2 builds of Mono Fire, but both of them in essence have the same thing. So I spent about like 4 hours just staring at both lists and saying like how the early game plays. Like when they play Suppressor, what subset of hands are going to beat those, or which ones like always lose, so I know I have to jam sooner. Or like if they have a very aggressive draw, I know that my like the second Devour / Display of Menace effect is like particularly bad. You can get into a funny board state where you can just clear their board with Display of Menace and Condemn, which actually ended up happening because they just had all X1s and like 1 Vadius, and the next turn they just draw and pass, and I'm just like, oh my God, it happened. So that's something I encourage people to do, both in open deck lists and also with like testing. Like the first 5 turns of the game just kind of mean everything to me, and you have all the tools, you can do all the work. Like I kid you not, I have a notepad right next to me that, like, from my finals match that's still up, and just says fast spells, Condemn, Flash Ride, Display of Menace, and then all the market cards that are fast. So now if there's a pause, I can just look here and be like, hey, that's all the fast stuff. And then I have another one called like Burst. Like, how can I just take more damage if I need to Machinations on 6 and like lose some life? Did that. And then just other like notables. But in terms of like which deck I was more afraid of, I think I was actually more afraid of Soldiers than I was Mono Fire, because of the technique that can negate a spell unless you pay 2. Yeah. That one can just like, it's just very difficult to play around, where you just find yourself jamming into it a lot more often than you would like because of the amount of pressure they put on. And weirdly enough, like, sure, you have that like overwhelm aspect, and I think Might Weaver's probably one of the most important cards. Like when I was playtesting my head, all the games where they have Might Weaver on 3 were way scarier than any other 3-drop that they could play, because it just enables like the fastest kills out of nowhere.
Good. That's a very detailed answer and great advice as well. I love the notepad. I love the notepad next to your game with all the thoughts there. Ace, I'll toss it over to you. What you got?
So I guess you didn't play it a lot beforehand, so maybe you don't know the matchups that much. But what was your kind of feeling? So for me, I sort of had this feeling that it was sort of a rock, paper, scissors between Sling, Overloader, and various mid-range / aggro decks that could beat Overloader because they had enough disruption, but were too slow to beat Sling. How did you view the format triangle, or if it was a triangle at all?
Well, I definitely like listed what I thought would be the top decks, which is just the Sling nonsense, Overloader, some mid-range like Menace deck, and the Loto Ground aggro deck. So I guess I kind of have it grouped up into like 4 things. And it seems like one thing that's really interesting about conclusions people come to involves how they come to the conclusions. So if something is like, oh, I played on ladder, and every time I play against, say, Sling, they always have it, so I'm just off this deck because they always have Sling. The problem with card games in general is that it's very difficult to actually have a large enough like meaningful sample size. I think you need to like come up with hypotheses and test them, and just kind of work through these like iterative cycles. So one thing that I think actually happened was there are really good Overloader players out there. Like you can see it from the TNA, and Kolokoma plays, and I'm So Bad play this deck better than I do. But like a lot of people, when they're thinking about their matchup percentage, say against like Mono Fire, like Cola and I both played against Mono Fire in the top 64, and we both won. Like, you're going to get certain skewed results if you just rely on the randomness that is like ladder testing. There are people that are very good on ladder, and there are certain people that are picking up Overloader for the first time, but they all look the same when you like enter it data-wise. So I think it's very important when choosing the the deck you want to play and actually thinking about how these 4 decks interact with each other, you got to get 2, or yourself ideally, and someone you respect to really like jam the matchups and come to some sort of conclusion. So I actually think Overloader, maybe slight hindsight bias, but I think it just had a good matchup against everything except for Soldiers, and maybe Mono Fire was like even to slightly bad.
Yeah. All right. Good
So
answer.
with that in mind, I would definitely play Overloader.
All right. Corey's got a question. Corey in chat has, what's the most nervous you were ever in a tournament, and how did you overcome that feeling?
So I guess I have pretty strange rituals when it comes to online tournaments. I'm no slouch when it comes to card games, even though I've only been playing Eternal for a year. And even in Magic the Gathering and here, I get nervous before every Pro Tour World style event that I've played in. Like I treasure that. I feel like that's what makes me human. Like I'm like literally shaking, and I want to tell everyone how everything is. Like I played my top 8 match against Doc, and I was like equally shaking and just like could not believe what was happening. Like it's like tough, but I have tea that I drink, and when I'm at home, I make sure I'm like very well hydrated. But I also do like yoga, stretching. Like I really clear my head between every single game. So they give you about, I forget if it's 3 or 5 minutes in between the games before you can hit the join button. And I'm literally just walking around my apartment, like doing ragdoll pose, like lying down on the floor. And I found that really helps me. Like in Magic, I didn't have success until like a very condensed period of time, where I think I really just learned how to like get my mind into a really good mindset, where I ended up winning 4 Magic Online PTQs in 16 months when I played like 8 of them and top 8 of like 6 of them. And I didn't just magically get better at Magic. I just like understood how I operate, and I'm just like shuffling up for game 2 of my finals. I guess I'm going to do downward dog for 5 minutes, or whatever amount of time they let me. So I think I encourage people to kind of find either a ritual or habit. And I remember last time I just discovered deep breathing, and I was just deep breathing for as much time as I could before, like in between my matches. I don't know how that's gonna apply to paper like Magic tournaments when I come back, but luckily I can always do it for Eternal. Love it.
Gonna get in the aisles between tables and start doing down dog between your between your games.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely allowed to. I definitely like stood up and stretched between top 8 matches and stuff in Magic tournaments.
Yeah. Quick shout out here. So something you mentioned, it's just so applicable. So the most recent episode of the Backlash podcast that I think came out today or yesterday was all about just mental health and how the boxer does something very similar. I think the boxer said drinks a whole glass of water and goes to the bathroom between literally every game, not only every match. So definitely check out that episode as well, Chad, if you want to hear more about that. Doc, over to you. And any questions for Watchwolf?
I'd just be interested to know if you have any predictions for what Expedition would look like going forward, or for like if you think any cards will be changed.
Yeah, I guess I don't think about this as often as I should, because I just like playing with the cards I'm given. Like whatever Direwolf does, I trust. But I'll try to answer the question. So it's pretty hard to change Overloader without, like, you can't change the ability because you want that essence in your game, or I'm assuming in the game. Otherwise, you want to make the card. So I think the only thing you can change is like making O1 doesn't do anything. Like changing its stats doesn't do anything. You just have to make it cost a different amount. But then that gets really interesting too. Like make it cost 2. Now you have salvo markets. Like it's a nerf in terms of like maybe this hardiness sort of stuff. But I don't know how the game engine exactly works, like rules wise. Like if there's a way you can make it so that way the spell has to resolve to get like once it finishes, then you get the power. Like the fact that I can just like machinations, now I have 40, whether or not you do anything, is kind of like I don't know if there's a way to solve that in the game's engine. Let's see, what else can you possibly touch? I don't think hardiness or any of the amplify cards should get hurt for overloaders like Sins or anything like that. And then the most obvious one, but it's hard because they just pushed out a new product, is the Grenahen Occultist. Like everyone knows these cards are good. The problem with Suppressor is that you can just play damage things that kill it, like Vicious Overgrowth and stuff like that. So it doesn't. They both feel slightly too good, but I understand why they want to just see how things shake out, and I respect them for it. But you can probably just do something similar to Even-Handed Golem, like just adjust the stat line. You can probably keep the essence of the card there, even if you made like Crafty Occultist, I don't know, 3/1, 2/2, like something that totals 4, and then if you change Grenahen to like 1/2, at least it gets salvoed. I don't know.
Okay. Ace, Doc, any more questions for Watchwolf? No, neither of you. All right, Watchwolf, why don't you tell us and everyone in chat, where can people find you? What have you got going on in your life? Anything you want to share with us?
Sure. So Watchwolf92 on everything you can imagine. So Twitter, I guess I don't have like an Instagram yet, but Twitter, Twitch, I stream, I don't know, once a year, once every 2 years, and people seem to like it. I try to be active in the Misplay Discord. I could do a better job of that, so I'll work on that. Yeah, I guess I don't really know how to answer anything else, but now I have a lot more time. I'm gonna try hard every event. So any fantasy league you're in, Watchwolf92 is still gonna do its best. And I don't know if this is like a spoiler or anything, but I'll attempt or try to commentate some TNEs.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. So we've got you scheduled, right? I think we have 2 scheduled coming up shortly this season with you hosting. So really looking forward to that, and that's gonna be awesome. And that was before you were an open winner, even more now.
Yeah, maybe now people can listen to me. No, I'm just kidding.
Keith Pelleg with a late question says, "What is your favorite deck in Eternal?"
Ooh, I know my favorite card is still Sparkcatcher, but my favorite deck. So I made this deck. I think Doc was still on the team for this. It's like this Rakano Expedition deck from like 2 seasons ago or whatever. And I called it like first 2-card Monty, where you just assembled 2 cards together, and it was like really cool. But then I eventually called it like Dead Cows Rakano. And the idea behind it was, so everyone was playing Milos in every fire deck you could possibly imagine. I'm just like, wait, the way my Rakano deck is built, this card doesn't do anything. It's bad. Like, why are people still doing this? So I want to like destroy all the sacred cows, and I like kept on testing a list that wasn't playing Milos, and its win percentage went up because of it. But the deck structure was it played what's the name of the 2-cost stranger that turns into a 6/7 after you mastery 6?
Oh, Varret.
Varret.
Yeah, Varret. So it played Varret and Kira, the one that keeps its stats, and then I would just play like 4 Wind Invocation or Wind Conjuring, and so you just tried, and there was not very good removal that like. Forget if it'll Suffocate. I think Defile might have existed, but Shadow wasn't as good or something like that. Or maybe people were playing Worthy Cause in their like in their sack decks. But so the goal is just on turn 3, you just make a 6/7 that stays a 6/7, and then also play like Kosin to also just like play your pump spells and output a dragon, and you play Jack. What was really cool about it was on the play you have this like gimmick, like I have 6/7. Too bad you played a 2-drop. But I spent days just trying to come up with your best configuration on the draw. So one thing I think people don't do often enough, and my goal is to win the tournament. I understand day 1 you just play like 1 game, but you're always, if you're going to win a match, you're going to play 1 game on the draw. Technically, you could win the die roll in the first game and win the 3rd game if you like win both the times you're in the play. But I think every deck is advantage when it's on the play. So I want to build the best possible deck, thinking I'm going to be on the draw literally every game. And the Dead Cows Rakano deck did a really good job of that, because on 3 you could just play like Kira, leave up Finest Hour, and now your fire opponent literally can't do anything and stuff like that.
Really clever how you think about that. I like that a lot. All right. Well, as you said, you're on WatchWolf92 on everywhere we can find you. Future TNE co-host. So if you enjoyed the interview with WatchWolf92 tonight, you will get much more of him coming up in this rest of the spring season. So thank you, WatchWolf, for joining us, and of course, congratulations. Now you can relax for the rest of the year. You got it. Any final words?
I just wanted to thank everyone who believes in me, whether or not you're on the misplay. Obviously, very thankful for the misplay in terms of, deck selection and tuning and support and all that stuff. But also the people that I'm just friends with in Eternal or support me from the Magic days, and really just everyone. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll let you go, WatchWolf. Go get some rest. Try to calm those jitters a little bit after being on a high, I'm sure. But thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, and we will be seeing you soon.
Yeah, see everyone later.
All righty. Well, let's see. We are going to get our main host back. Welcome back, Ace. Welcome back, Doc. All right. That was pretty good. Let's jump into metagame here. So let's give me a second to get this up. I'm going to share my screen here with our hosts. And let's pull up the metagame and let's talk through that real. All right. So day 2 metagame. Well, we have a lot to talk about this one. So day 2 metagame, 11 copies of what I've labeled Menace Krull. I got a lot of different suggestions for that name, but Doc, you can tell us about that one. 11 copies of Rainbow Sling, 7 copies of Monofire, 6 copies of Combo, 6 copies of Soldier, 6 copies of Mandrakes, 4 copies of Tesseract, and then a slew of other decks as well. So relatively balanced day 2. It wasn't like one deck took it over. As Ace was saying, it's sort of a rock, paper, scissors metagame a little bit. There was a lot of different options. So Doc, I'll let you start us off if you want to talk about, I know one of these 2 top decks here, but if you want to talk a little bit about your approach to the metagame, your team's approach to the metagame, what did you expect to see? Is this sort of what you expected to see going in? And then one note, if you want to touch on this too, is the decks that made the top 4 not being in the top 3 decks represented. So I'll let you go off from there.
Yeah, so if you break down the 11 Menace Krull decks, there are 9 of the, I believe, exact same 80, and then 2 that were the TBC versions. So Eternal Titan, CSB, 9 of us made day 2, all bringing the same 80 cards, and it's this FPS Krull strategy. Try to think about it this way. Krull is really good, and we want to maximize how much dumb, broken things we can do with Krull. And so we have lots of really good units. We have a curve that tops out at 3 besides the Krull, so that when we discard a 3-drop to Whispering Wind on, like, say, turn 3, we have 3 power open with 2 shadow. We can guarantee that we reanimate the 3-drop. That's pretty important for consistency and just for explosive starts and all of that. Crafty Cultist is really good. Grenahen's really good. The idea is, like, we are, like, super power efficient. We can create a huge tempo advantage. We have lots of different ways to interact. Overgrowth is good at, like, dealing with, like, Grand Suppressor, but can also kill, like, a Speaking Circle or a Tower. And the market has a few different things. Haunting Scream's good. Moldermuck with regen, really good. And imagine you can go, like, Scream it, and it has charge, and it's really good. and Purveyor is great. From Beyond is a card we really liked. It was pretty good into the. It gave us some extra game into the Overloader decks. So it's also just, like, can be a nice play. It's power efficient. Like, our deck is really, like, focused around, like, power efficiency, so that helps there. Overall, like, when we were testing for this tournament, we tried out a lot of things. What we found is, like, with a lot of things we tried, that they weren't exactly, like, as consistent as we wanted. Like, the Overloader deck was clearly really powerful, but we didn't find a version we were, like, super thrilled with. And so we were working on this FPS Krull deck that I believe was, I don't remember if it was Lion to Zion or Portage that gave us the first list with Syl, but that was a game changer because Syl does a few things. It's a 5/1, it has decay. It makes your Huntresses better. You can generate 1/1s, and it replaces itself with a 1/1. And these 1/1 flying lifesteal bats are really good because evasion's important, and later in the game you can, like, suit one up with a Dark Purveyor ETB and just, like, attack for a bunch. it's another way to win games. And multiple sills on board is pretty crazy. The one big problem though is that you have to have a good power base to do that. Now I think our power base was okay. I do wonder maybe if we could have made it better, but overall, I think we did a reasonable job with it. The other thing to note is like even if you don't have the power for it, and there's some cases where you can just like crawl it back or reanimate it somehow, and then you still get to play it without needing a triple shadow. But yeah, we basically like worked on this deck feeling like it was one of the most powerful things to be doing in the format, and it worked out pretty well.
All right, thank you for going through that. All right, Ace, over to you. You started us off by talking about the rock paper scissors metagame. Why don't you tell us your kind of overall meta analysis of this weekend?
So the deck that TRS played and that I thought was the strongest was Rainbow Sling. It's generally everything but Justice. Our build had a slightly more consistent but slower power base with House Alliance, so it could have Market, Know Thy Enemy to help a lot against Drakes and aggro. But basically, I think this is a deck with the most raw power, and it completely pushes a ton of decks out. Like any sort of slower mid-range deck, like TJS deck that was in top 4, I didn't think was going to be making a showing because of decks like Sling. Gerald decks are strong against Overloader because you can play stuff like Dazzler, Swift Refusal, or if you're Huru Gerald, you can play Builder's Decree, which is probably the best single card against Overloader if your deck's plan is remotely aggressive. But like decks like that just get completely bullied by Sling. So Sling was kind of like my main focus that I thought everything revolved around. You had to have a plan against Sling, whether that plan be to Overloader combo and kind of just not care, like, oh, you played a fatty, like take 999, or to be. So like I don't want to say go under it because like I don't think Fire and Soldiers like those way overperformed my expectations. I just thought aggro lost to everything. But to kind of like go under it and make an overwhelming thing. So like this is where like the Mandrakes and the Tesseract fall in. Like you're faster at setting up than like Sling into Fatty, and you make something overwhelming with like 80 power lifesteal with Mandrakes or a 12/12 that draws 6 extra cards per turn with Tesseract. The field in my mind is sort of this triangle between Sling combo and then decks that do something overwhelming fast. And I guess Menace Crawls falls into that too, along with Mandrakes and Tesseract, because you can do some really stupid stuff on turn 3 or 4 with like Crawl and Know the Enemy and Whispering Winds. So that's those are kind of the decks that I considered.
Sounds good. We also wanted to highlight another deck that you considered. So let me get this one pulled up on screen. I know you wanted to talk about this one briefly. So I'm going to pull up this deck list here real quick. All right, talk us through this one, the 2019 FJS. So what are we talking about here?
Yeah, so unfortunately, this deck sort of falls into that mid-range along with Draw and TJS, where I think that it gets sort of pushed out because it's not going to beat Combo and Sling. But this deck is the most fun that I've had in a while. So the initial shell came from Murder of Crows. Then I worked on the power base and trimmed that up, made it a lot nicer. I talked to Isomorphic about this deck and made a few more changes. And I was on like a really sick streak, like Wednesday and Thursday night before the tournament. I something like 12-0 down to rank 5 or 4 or so. I'm not sure what rank I am now. I haven't logged into the client in a while, but I was doing really well with this deck on ladder, but I didn't trust it to play it in a tournament because I don't think that it's favorable against Sling and Overloader. The general idea here is that Display of Ambition, Display of Menace are really, really good. Down Dark Scrounger can buy back either one of them. Display of Ambition self-damage when you draw units counts as a damage-dealing spell. So you sort of grind for forever, play a lot of small units and removal, and then eventually you can Display of Ambition back Scrounger plus other unit, ideally a Occultist, Grenahen, or Cyberhound, because those are 2-for-1 units, and that you can then sacrifice to the Scrounger to buy back Display of Ambition, to buy back Scrounger plus another unit, and you can just kind of loop this forever and gain infinite value and draw a million cards. And eventually you win with like a Vine-Grafted Molder Muck or like Iraq buffing a Molder Muck or another Iraq to Oblivion, or Purveyor plus Scream. Like Purveyor on Grenahen gains you life to keep on Display of Ambition looping, and then later on you can Scream the Purveyor or the Grenahen and win, or something. You find a way. But basically it's just a slow, grindy deck that draws infinite cards, and it's really fun.
Absolutely. So that's a sweet one. So definitely check that out. All right, we are going to talk some interesting questions here now, but wanted to give a quick heads up to everyone over for the upcoming TNEs. So, for those of you who are unaware, this show is brought to you by Tuesday Night Eternal. We are the community organized tournament series. We are granting 2 seats to Worlds this year. So, we've got the spring season going right now. Spring season will finish up. We got 6 more weeks left, and then we'll have the spring invitational, which, Doc, you are qualified for. One of our guest hosts here, qualified for that invitational. The winner of that 16-player invitational will take home that invite to Worlds. So, who will be joining you, Ace, and you, Boxer, as well as Watchwolf, on taking that in. So Doc also was our winter season champion, so you know how that goes. Well, the next 2 challenges are also Expedition. So that's challenge number 7 and challenge number 8. That'll be next Friday, April 23rd, followed by the Tuesday after that. So whatever that day is, the 26th or 27th there, will be the next one there. So go ahead, get signed up. Those are at battlefied.com/Tuesday Night Eternal. You can go find and register for either of those. All right, let's head back to the booth, and we are going to talk about nerfs. So the next question, which we kind of started a little bit with Watchwolf, is after this turn, after the first open, there was a lot of talk about nerfs. It was something needs to get nerfed. This isn't fair. This isn't fun. This is not balanced. This one's a little bit different. So you still have a combo threat here in the format, but other than that, it was actually a really balanced metagame. So the first question is, does anything need to be nerfed or balanced after this tournament?
Well, the metagame was looking pretty wide open. Like there were a lot of decks in the top 8 and the top 16 and stuff. Like, and you even saw decks that I didn't expect to make it, like TJS and stuff, go. I really think that the format would be better and more open if Sling and Overloader were completely deleted. Like. Okay. That makes a lot of decks I love to play, like that FJS deck and Gerald decks and like various Dovid decks. I mean, those like are okay-ish, but like slightly slower Dovid decks, like Combray Ramp, for example. Like that, it just opens up so many more decks if midrange isn't completely pushed out by this overwhelming midrange and this fast spell combo deck.
Okay, Doc, counter argument.
Well, I think the card Sling overall has like actually just one problem, and most of the other problems I think are kind of like whatever. But the big problem to me is that anti-transform text. I think if you get rid of that text, Sling is very reasonable, and the people that want to put it in their deck can do that, and it can be fine. But then the heavy primal players can actually answer Sling, which I think is a big thing. And like I know in testing, like I was like trying like Gerald decks, and they just like couldn't beat Sling. I was like,
make Olziol a main deck 4 of everywhere.
Yeah, basically. And so that's the thing. And I've said this many times. That's what I would change for Sling. As far as other changes, I think I like where things are at now. But if there was something to be changed, I would look at either Kroll and or no one to hold them, because I think that's still ridiculous. I've said this before, but in general, across constructed formats right now, I think Kroll juggling is probably the single most powerful thing to be doing. I'm going to stand by that until something changes.
Actually, Doc, I have a question for you. So yeah. I think it's pretty obvious after this tournament that Crafty Occultist is just like the most powerful card and does ridiculous things. But one is from the new X-Pack that just came out. It's like there's no way they're going to nerf it. And 2, I think that's a sort of fun card that can be overpowered. Like it just adds to the consistency of your deck. It draws cards. Like it doesn't do anything unfun. It's just like some stats on the board and fixing your hand. Like, do you think it's okay for a card like Occultist to be overpowered?
That it was okay for Maploft Huntress to be overpowered, so I also think that it's okay for Crafty Occultist to be overpowered. I mean, it's definitely the kind of card I like. It involves a lot of decision making. It's generally interactive. Like it's okay to have some cards that are really, really strong, but when they lead to repetitive gameplay that takes agency away from the player, then that can be problematic for sure. But I don't think Crafty does that. I think Crafty, actually gives players a lot of agency.
Absolutely. I know Hen maybe not as quite as powerful as that, but I do love that both Hen and Crafty Occultist came out in this most recent bunch of cards and saw immediate competitive play. But like you said, Doc, I think you said this very well, not in a broken way that kind of ruined games. That it actually 2 very powerful cards that caused a lot of interaction, a lot of decision making, and just I think made a big impact on Expedition and honestly Throne too, because we saw last open made some impact on Throne as well. So interesting cards there. But I agree with you, Ace. I don't think those are being touched, at least for a little while. while. All right, so now moving on to the next topic, which is similar to the last one, but going forward from here. So we actually have, the next open is going to be draft. We'll get to that in a minute, but there are 2 more TNEs, which are going to be expedition, and then 2 more, which probably, I think by the last 2, probably the format will change. But at least for the next 2 tournaments next week, we got 2 more competitive expedition tournaments coming up. So how does this change? What's the meta going to look like? Do either of you think that one deck is going to solidify? Do you think Overloader is going to be countered? What would you bring? Kind of, what do you think the metagame is going to look like in these 2 important tournaments coming up?
I would still bring Sling. I think that it's good against a lot of stuff in a really overwhelming way, that your rate is just absurdly high. And the stuff that it's bad against, it can still steal a lot of games, just because Samiel into Transpose for Death from Above is 2-card, 2-turn OTK. It's like nobody respects or expects Death from Above. I mean, they should now, but that's just a really, really absurd combo, and I think that deck is still the deck to play.
I think for Expedition, I would probably still run back the FPS Kroll deck, but I think there are a lot of like really reasonable choices in Expedition. I think that format will stay relatively open for the time being. For Throne, on the other hand, I feel pretty strongly at this point that FPS Trove is the best deck in that format.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't see it actually seeing as much play as its strength indicates, because it takes a lot of reps and a lot of time to actually see that work translate into a good win rate. And so you're gonna get people playing all sorts of stuff, but I think pilots who are able to maximize the potential of FPS Trove will benefit in Throne going forward.
Okay, a couple of random fun questions. Cat Planet asked, LightsOutAce, do you own a fedora or a trench coat? I don't know if there's some inside joke there, if it's just a random question, but we got to ask. Trench coat, fedora?
I don't own either of those, actually.
All right, well that
closest, the only goofy thing that I own is like Renaissance Fair garb, like the poofy shirt and like the
nice
Renaissance Fair vest and pants. That's the only like cosplay stuff I have.
All right, love it. All right, and then for both of you, if you could delete any card from Eternal, what would it be? And then the parentheses there was, and why is it Sling? But what card would you delete if you could delete any card from Eternal?
Oh, I probably would delete Sling right now, but it's gonna rotate out of Expedition soon. It's not a problem in Throne at all. True. So if I could delete any card, I don't think I'd waste it on Sling. I think I'd spend it on. Man, I don't know. There's nothing that I really hate. I guess I just ban Rally and Fire Conjuring forever, just out of spite, just because they deserve it.
All right, Doc, what about you?
So I wouldn't delete anything. All I would do is I would get rid of the no transform text on Sling, and then I would go about my day. That's it. That's all there is to do.
All right, let's switch gears here a little bit. So the next open is something relatively new, relatively different, which is going to be a draft open. So I don't know all the details logistically about how exactly that's going to work. I'm not sure if they've explained specifically, but we're going to have a couple draft opens this year. So why don't each of you kind of talk to us about both what to expect from draft? I don't know if we're getting a card set before then or not. It's only a couple weeks away, so I don't think so. But how would you approach a draft open would be one question. And then what should all the players who want to prep for that, who maybe are more constructed focused, what's the shift in thinking and how should people be looking for that tournament coming up?
I mean, you just have to jam a lot of drafts. I mean, it helps a lot to go into streams of good drafters and ask them why they're making the picks they're making. I mean, like, good fundamentals are good fundamentals. Like, you just have to pick the good cards and then play well in the games.
It's as simple as that. Pick the good cards and play them well in games.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna definitely be doing some drafts on stream in the future. Hopefully, chat will teach me how to draft this format because I've never drafted it before. But in seriousness, I'm looking forward to doing some kind of co-op drafts with teammates and stuff, and just kind of get a general feel of the format. I know for the last draft tournament, I think it was Finkel that did a really nice write up about the format that definitely helped all of us during our runs. Just kind of understand what was going on, and I think this time it'll be a good collaborative process, and I'm excited. I was good at drafting in Magic. I've never been good at drafting in Eternal. I'll see if I can translate those Magic skills over.
Absolutely. All right, we've got a little more time. So one topic that I wanted to discuss a little bit, because as I mentioned, it came up on the Backlash podcast, and then it was mentioned by Watchwolf as well. Sort of a hybrid of mental health, but then also sort of preparation for big tournaments. Of course, this is after a big tournament. Both of you have won great big tournaments with a lot of pressure in the past. So if you guys don't mind spending a couple minutes, Ace, we'll start with you. How do you approach sort of mental health in general, but specifically around preparing for big events? You know, there's a lot of pressure on that, very nervous, especially if you haven't played in a lot of them. How would you approach both kind of day one, but then also day two kind of big tournaments?
Well, I mean, the strongest thing you can do for your mental health is to just be prepared. Well, and it's to be in a good place outside of the game, of course, but that's way easier said than done. Like in the context of actually like playing card games online, like Watch Wolf touchdown, you just have to like have your calm down focus ritual, and like you're gonna make mistakes, like you're gonna make game losing punts. Like I made one on day one of Worlds, and then like I just won my next match, so I wasn't out and it was okay. Like you just gotta refocus and play the best that you can from then on. And if you can, even in the middle of a game, like you have 80 seconds or for your turn timer. Like when you make a huge mistake, instead of just like passing and raging through the rest of that game, like stand up and like touch your toes or something and like take a drink of water and sit down and then play the best you can from then on. Like maybe you can recover.
Doc, thoughts?
Yeah, I have an interesting story about mental health. I guess it's not like a long story, but essentially, about 2 weeks before the last chance qualifier, I started my medical transition process, and I think that has basically really given me like the mental stability to actually like perform in card game tournaments, but also to like um, test well and like keep myself healthy, like just throughout my lifestyle in general. And I don't talk about it a ton, but I think that step that I took in my life is like what is giving me like the success recently, but also just like it's made everything more enjoyable too. And that's a big part of it is like it's hard to do well in card game tournaments, or kind of it's hard to achieve your goals if you're not having a good time.
Yeah, it's a
And
good
so
point.
like having a really like positive constructive outlook on things has really leveled up my game in like amazing ways.
I like that quote. It's hard to perform well when you're not enjoying yourself. I think that's a good thing for sure. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap up here in a minute. So going forward, Lights Out Ace, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you? What do you have going on other than relaxing and chilling with your free invite to the World Championships? Where can people find you? What are you doing? And how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm at LightsOutAce on Twitter. LightsOutAce1 on YouTube. I'm also LightsOutAce on Twitch. I haven't streamed for a while. I have a 2-year-old son, so it's hard to find time. So, but maybe I'll stream again in the future.
Yep.
And that's about all for me.
All right, Doc, where can people find you?
I'm in a bunch of places. So I stream on Twitch Mondays and Wednesdays from 11:30 to 3 Pacific. That's twitch.tv/Doc28CCG. I'm on Twitter, same handle. I'm also just like in the various Discords. So like for people that are interested in like Eternal related stuff, like card game related stuff, my DMs are open. You can like ping me or like DM me about things. Always welcome. And yeah, I have a blog, docslaboratory.wordpress.com. I haven't written anything there in a while, but hopefully I'll start, picking up the pace on that content soon. Yeah, that's it.
All right, we're going to wrap up on a positive note. So last time it was our first open, and the Boxer and I talked a little bit about, and Sunny and Stormblast, on how great Eternal was at that time and how great it was to have competitive Eternal back. So ending with a chance to say something positive about the game, what obviously I'm pretty excited about right now. I think this year has been really great for Eternal. I know we were kind of worried about what was going to happen with organized play, and then I think ever since that announcement, things have been just really positive. Just great, great metagames, great cards, good tournaments. Obviously, I'm a little biased with community tournaments, but it's been great to see all the energy around it and seeing everybody playing and coming back. So I'll kind of let's wrap it up with something positive from each of you. What's going on right now? What's your favorite thing about Eternal right now?
Well, I mean, I think it's great to have the title tournaments and to have the community tournaments. I just love that there's these tournaments to watch all the time. And my favorite thing about Eternal is the various discords. It's just so fun to be able to go and talk about my favorite game anytime.
Doc?
Yeah, for sure. The single best thing, like in my opinion, about Eternal, at least what's been the best for me, is this awesome community. It's just one of the nicest corners of the internet I have ever been to in my life, ever. And you know, it's pretty cool to be able to interact with a bunch of different people in really positive ways, and be able to foster a great community environment.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we are going to wrap up. Thank you, everyone, for watching the Open today. Thank you for hanging out with us on the after show. Thank you for all the follows. Pepsiler, Kabbalah, Bone Breezer, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. JP Savard as well. Thank you all so much for the follows. Thanks for being here today. And yeah, make sure you go ahead and check out that Open coming up in a couple weeks. That'll be a draft Open, and then we've got 2 TNEs. So this upcoming Friday and then the following Tuesday will both be Expedition. So go ahead and get signed up for that, and you can find those right here on this Twitch. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. On behalf of our 2020 World Champion, LightsOutAce, and the TNE Winter Champion, Doc28, my name is Telemachus, and we will see you next time. Thanks, everybody.